I wasn't sure I was supposed to see stories, so I figured I'd share them here. I've been a SAR officer for a few years now, and along the way I've seen some things that I think you guys will be interested in. I have a pretty good track record for finding missing people. Most of the time they just wander off the path or slip down a small cliff and they can't find their way back. The majority of them have heard the old stay where you are thing and they don't wander far, but I've had two cases where that didn't happen. Both bother me a lot, and I use them as motivation to search even harder for the missing person cases I get called on. The first was a little boy who was out berry picking with his parents. He and his sister were together, and both of them went missing around the same time. Their parents lost sight of them for a few seconds, and in that time, both of the kids apparently wandered off. When their parents couldn't find them, they called us, and we came out to search the area. We found the daughter pretty quickly, and when we asked her where her brother was, she told us that he'd been taken away by the Bear Man. She said that he gave her berries and told her to stay quiet, and that he wanted to play with her brother for a while. The last she saw of her brother, he was riding on the shoulders of the Bear Man and seemed calm. Of course, our first thought was abduction, but we'd never found a trace of another human being in that area. The little girl was also persistent that he wasn't a normal man, but that he was tall and covered in hair, like a bear, and that he had a weird face. We searched that area for weeks. It was one of the longest calls that I'd ever been on, but we never found a single trace of that kid. The other was a young woman who was out hiking with her mom and grandpa. According to her mother, her daughter had climbed up a tree to get a better view of the forest, and she never came back down. They waited at the base of the tree for hours calling her name before they called for help. Again, we searched everywhere, but we never found a trace of her. I have no idea where she could have possibly have gone, because neither her mother nor her grandfather saw her coming down. A few times I've been out on my own with a canine, and they've tried to leave me off straight up cliffs. Not hills, not even rock faces, straight sheer cliffs with no possible handholds. It's always baffling, and in those cases, we usually find the person on the other side of the cliff or miles away from where the canine had led us. I'm sure there's an explanation, but it's sort of strange. One particularly sad case involved the recovery of a body. A 9-year-old girl fell down an embankment and got impaled on a dead tree at the base. It was a complete freak accident, and I'll never forget the sound that her mother made when we told her what had happened. She saw the body bag being loaded into the ambulance, and she let out the most haunting, heartbroken wail that I've ever heard. It was like her whole life came crashing down around her, and part of her had died with her daughter. I heard from another SAR officer that she killed herself a few weeks after it happened. She just couldn't live with the loss of her daughter. I was teamed up with another SAR officer because we received reports of bears in the area. We were looking for a guy who hadn't come home from a climbing trip when he was supposed to, and we ended up having to do some serious climbing just to get where we figured he'd been. We found him trapped in a small crevice with a broken leg. It was not pleasant. He had been there for at least 2 days, and his leg was very obviously infected. We were able to get him into a chopper, and I heard from the other EMTs that he was absolutely inconsolable. He kept talking about how he'd been doing fine, and when he got into the top, a man had been there. He said that the guy had no climbing equipment, and that he was wearing a parka and ski pants. He walked up to the guy, and when he went to turn him around, he said he had no face. He was just blank. He freaked out and ended up trying to climb off the cliff too fast, which is why he had fallen. He said he could hear the guy all night, climbing down the mountain and letting out these horrible, muffled screams. That story bothered the hell out of me, and I'm glad that I wasn't there to hear it. One of the scariest things I've ever had happen to me involved the search of a young woman who had gotten separated from her hiking group. We were out until late at night because the dogs had picked up her scent, but when we found her, she was curled up under a large rotted log. She was missing her shoes and pack, and she had clearly was in shock. She didn't have any injuries, though, and we were able to get her to walk with us back to base ops. Along the way, she kept looking behind us and asking why that big man with black eyes was following us. We couldn't see anyone, so we just wrote it off as some weird symptom of shock, but the closer we got to base, the more agitated this woman got. She kept asking me to tell him to stop making faces at her. At one point, she turned around, stopped, and started yelling into the forest, saying that she wanted him to leave her alone. She wasn't going to go with him, she said, and she wasn't going to give us to him. We finally got her to keep moving, but we started hearing these weird noises coming from all around us. It was almost like coughing, but more rhythmic and deeper. It was almost insect-like. I don't really know how else to describe it. When we were within sight of the base ops, the woman turns to me and her eyes were about as wide as I imagined the human could possibly open them. She touches my shoulder and she says, "He says to tell you to speed up. He doesn't like looking at the scar on your neck." I have a very small scar on the base of my neck, but it's mostly hidden under my collar. I have no idea how this woman saw it, and right after she says it, I hear this weird coughing right in my ear. I just about jump out of my skin and I hustle her over to the ops, trying not to show how freaked out I was, but I have to say I was really happy when we left that area that night. Alright, this is the last one I'll tell, and it's probably the weirdest story that I have. Now, I don't know if this is true in every SAR unit, but in mine, it's sort of an unspoken, regular thing that we run into. You can try asking about it with the other SAR officers, but even if they know what you're talking about, they probably won't say anything else about it. We've been told not to talk about it by our superiors, and at this point, we've all gotten so used to it that it doesn't even seem weird anymore. On just about every case where we're really far into the wilderness, and I'm talking about 30 to 40 miles at some points, we find a staircase in the middle of the woods. It's almost like if you took the stairs in your own house, cut them out, and put them in the forest. I asked about it the first time I saw some, and the other officer told me not to worry about it, and that it was normal. Everyone that I asked said the same thing. I wanted to go check them out, but I was told very emphatically that I should never go near any of them. I just sort of ignore them now when I run into them because it happens so frequently. I have a lot more stories, and I suppose if anyone's interested, I can tell you some more tomorrow. If anyone has any theories about the stairs, or if you've seen them too, go ahead and let me know. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time.